Warm greetings. Welcome to Wednesdays for Water. We are a citizens collective aiming to walk and talk water. We try to meet every week and connect people with various water worries and wisdoms. And in the process, we wish to curate future water warriors. The way we talk about trivial things for hours, water too needs walking and talking to address the rising water distresses. The way Wednesdays for Water is conceptualized as a prime time show, it wishes to make water everybody's business. The idea of the series was conceptualized in August 2020, and by the end of the year, the team and the structure was pretty much in shape. We started in April 2021 with Dr. Rajendra Singh's inaugural speech. We wish to bring science and society together, and therefore we try to bring in every session either a policymaker or practitioner and a researcher or academician. We also think that future generation is crucial and therefore they have presence in each session. We are going stronger with every week now with session on either quiz, couple of weeks of hard talks and a week of soft session of art and music. There is a simple structure for each session of quiz, hard session and soft session which are moderated by the core team member. Here is a glimpse of what we call as hard sessions and soft sessions. Besides walking and talking water, worries and wisdoms collectively, we see this as a platform to cross-connect and expand our network and explore possible collaborations. We are also making notes to publish both scientific and non-scientific work. Here is a glimpse of some of our writings. You may reach us through email, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and also look at our website www.w4w.in. We look forward to your suggestions and comments to make the series more meaningful and engaging. And meanwhile, we hope that you appreciate today's session.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to one more session of Wednesdays for Water. We are in our 7th session of Wednesdays for Water, and we are very excited to have you all, as well as we are excited to have our guest speakers today and discuss it. What is interesting today is that both the guest speakers and me are at one place. So we are live with each other, but not with you all. And another important thing is that what they're going to talk about today, for last 3 days, I am also understanding what they are working on. So I'm visiting the water bodies, trying to see how they are working on it and how Jal Swaraj can be actually worked out, can be operationalized. So today our topic is Jal Swaraj, where we want to look at a model which Pondicherry is trying to work on, one school, one pond. The genesis of this model is really from long time here, where they had also worked on Seeds of Change initiative, where they brought school people and also involved in environmental activities. So we have with us today Prabir Banerjee. We have Professor Raghunath Menon, and they are the main speakers today, and they are going to talk about how pond rejuvenation, tank rejuvenation is worked out here, what are the opportunities and challenges, and how are they envisaging this whole idea to bringing the community together. So Prabir is basically one of the most active members in Pondican, which stands for Pondicherry Citizens Action Network. And they have done extensive work on mobilizing communities on environmental activities. And it's not only community, but they have also been extremely successful in bringing all stakeholders together, from governor's house to all the political parties and as well as all CSRs possible. So Prabir is going to start, and I'm going to open the floor for him. But then we have Raghu. Now I'm calling him Raghu Menon, but Raghunath Menon. And he is director of Sri Aurobindo Society, which is another non-for-profit organization working extensively with school children, with environmental activities, with rural people, and all related to water, health, ecosystem rejuvenation and all. Then we have Anupama Bothi Reddy. She's a landscape architect from Chennai. She runs her own consultancy firm with Harini, and they call it T-Code. And why Anupama is here, I will tell why when she comes to talk about it. So I start the floor with Prabir asking a very naive question as a moderator, that since he has been in this firm for all these years working with community, with government and corporates, how does this idea of one school, one pond, or Jal Swaraj for that matter, really gets into people of Pondicherry? How do they really look at it that it is doable? And over to you, Prabir.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you, Mansi. Today is a very auspicious day. So wish you all a happy Durga Ashtami. It's also going to rain. Yeah, definitely it's going to rain. So Raghunath, Raghu and me are going to be speaking today. I'm from Pondicherry and Raghu is from Sri Aurobindo Society. Both of us are also members of some larger collectives. One is AGG, which is Alliance for Good Governance, working on environmental and social issues, specifically in Pondicherry. And we are also members of All for Water for All, which is a much larger collective. And it encompasses the whole bioregion, which I'm going to talk to you about. Now, the Swaraj is basically about self-rule, self-governance. But in the present context of water, we need Jal Swaraj, which comes out from the present situation of a hierarchical government control to a governance through individuals and communities, because water concerns everybody. And so we need to work all together. So it's about collaboration. There are two key words which you will see throughout the presentation. It is collaboration and integrated approach. Collaboration is about enrolling all the stakeholders in the initiative, especially when we're dealing with water. So it involves the government, it involves experts, it involves the institutions, communities, schools. So as many people as are there, the better will be the results. Secondly, the second is the integrated approach. When we are working with water, we need to look into all the aspects. If we miss out even one aspect, the results will not be what we expect. And when I say all the aspects, it means firstly information. We need to have all the information so that we can make informed decisions. We need to work on policies, because unless we are backed by policies and laws, all the efforts could just come to naught overnight. We need to have planning, which is sadly lacking. We just our government suffer from something called projectitis. They love projects. Funds come, projects. Funds come, project. There's no vision. There is no long-term planning. It's just project-based. So we need to get out of that and get into planning. We need to have consultations with the people. In fact, the whole planning should be done in consultation with the community, because they know what they want. Then we need to have action at the ground level in terms of implementation. So we need to take up a whole lot of projects. So these two words, collaboration and integration, is something which you should keep in mind as you go through the presentation. So we're talking about harmonizing. As Sri Aurobindo said, all problems of existence are essentially problems of harmony. So we need to build harmony firstly within ourselves, then with the society around, which is totally in disharmony, and finally with nature, which is supporting our existence. Now, as far as water is concerned, we need to take a long-term approach, and we need to have a wider perspective, as well as come to a meso level, which is a medium level, and then finally to the micro level. So first, let us take the big picture, which is the bioregion. So when we talk about planning, we need to have some defined boundaries. How do you define boundaries? We being in Pondicherry, it's a tough thing, because Pondicherry is not contiguous. It is in 14 different pockets. And in between, we have parts of Viluppuram district and parts of Cuddalore district. So many of our water bodies, like the Usteri, Bahur, these huge water bodies are partially in Pondicherry and partially in Tamil Nadu. So we need, and then we have the channels, the rivers, which pass through one state, comes to another state, then passes back to the other state, and comes back to Pondicherry, and so on. So in that context, we had a lot of discussions and deliberations to see what should be the defining boundaries. And we came to the conclusion that it should be the watershed area. Because the entire population of this area depend on the same water aquifers. So we should look at watershed areas. Now, this is something which is not accepted normally, because the government has town planning and country planning, and they have urban development and rural development. They don't look at this larger perspective, and action of one state can have serious repercussions for the other states. Now, we want to make it a very meaningful framework, because the most important is the natural infrastructure, which we are taking, the watershed area. We should also make sure that it meets the aspirations of the people. What do the people want? And thirdly, we talk about the rural-urban continuum, because most often the cities need water, need electricity or energy, need food, but obviously it is not grown in the cities, it is grown in the rural areas. And cities, when they grow, they just start encroaching on these rural areas and it causes serious problem. And if we take all these into account, we can design long-term sustainable communities. So the objectives of the bioregional planning is firstly to address region-wide environmental and economic and social issues, which, as I mentioned, many of these water bodies and villages are partially in Pondicherry and partially in Tamil Nadu. And secondly, to see how we can all collaborate for an economic prosperity and sustainable growth. And for this, as I mentioned, collaboration is absolutely the key. So the PBSC bioregion is basically, we have Pondicherry in the center, and it is a 40 kilometers radius, which is the starting point of the defining boundaries. Now, we have, for example, it's a 2,500 square kilometer area, which is nestled between 5 ecoregions. On the north, we have the Kaliveli tank, which is place for migratory birds, and it's a huge wetland. Then we come to Aurobind, which has created a huge ecosystem. Then we have the Usteri Lake, we have Bahur, and finally we have Perumal Eri, or the Perumal Lake, which is in Cuddalore district. And we have a common coast, which is the 80 kilometers coast. The natural infrastructure that we are talking about starts with the coast. So we have the beaches, sand dunes, estuaries, mangroves, and so on. Just behind it are the wetlands, the tanks and ponds, which hold the water coming down through the rivers and channels. And we have the forests, which help to support and protect these wetlands, regulate soil erosion, and it is absolutely essential for biodiversity and carbon sequestration. And this whole bioregion is very closely interconnected, because we share the same natural resources, the same climate, the same cultural and historical linkages. We have tourism, trade and transportation, and the common coast. So just imagine this area as a building. In a building, you have a foundation, you have a structure, and a superstructure. The foundation is essentially the natural features, things which existed even before humans came on this planet. So it talks about the water, underground water, soil types, minerals, the climatic conditions, flora, fauna, and so on, crops. Then we come to the structure, which is the human settlements, both rural and urban, and the infrastructure. So we need the infrastructure for water, drainage, sewage, power, and so on, transportation. And we also need infrastructure for health, education, and all the other social requirements. The superstructure is about all the activities. So we have economic activities, which is primary, secondary, and tertiary. And we also have non-economic activities, which is cultural, social, religious, recreational, and so on. Now, we all know that humans have an impact on the environment because of our habits, actions, and choices. So it is vital that in this bioregion, we decide collectively what is the future we want, and then come out with a vision document and plan for our sustainable development of the bioregion. Now we started this initiative. Actually, we started in 2008. We came out with this concept of bioregion. So to push this, we had the first meeting in Oroville, which was water management through integrated planning and regional collaboration. So it had people from the entire bioregion. After the meeting, one of the town planning officers said that I remember there was a letter, and we fished out that letter, and we found out that way back in 1986, the central government had written to both the governments of Pondicherry and Tamil Nadu that Pondicherry and Oroville are fast-growing cities, and they should take up regional planning. And a reminder was also sent in 2005. But unfortunately, no action was taken. But these two documents became the foundation for the bioregional planning, and it fitted in very well with our initiative. Then we had a series of meetings in Pondicherry, in Delhi. We met all the eminent people. We had a series of workshops and so on, which I have listed it out here. So what we'll talk about today is 4 aspects that I have already mentioned. One is the information, which is we need to do studies and come out with all the information so that we can have informed decision. This is a report that I'll talk about. Secondly, we talk about a consultation process. Thirdly, about the ground level action, and finally, on a policy decision. So as far as the bioregional planning framework is concerned, we did an extensive study for 1.5 years. We spoke to the farmers, the fishermen, the government officers, all collectively sitting in different places. Workshops were held in Cuddalore and Oroville and Villupuram and Pondi, in villages and towns, just to see what is the perspective of the people. And they all realized that, yes, we need to work together at the bioregional level because obviously the water issues. And we need to see what are the challenges. So the study actually incorporates what are the strengths and weaknesses of the entire bioregion and how we can make a roadmap for a sustainable growth. And the 4 key sectors we took are land use, transportation, water, and energy. So we've done a whole lot of data compilation, GIS mapping, workshops, and so on. This is a map you see of 2011. It's a land use map. And you can see the orange portions, which are basically the developed areas. And so land, as we all know, is scarce and valuable. And it actually represents the physical manifestation of the human aspiration in terms of infrastructure, in terms of activities, and so on. And land use planning is critical because it takes into account the optimal utilization of land and its relationship with the environment so that we can have a proper planning. So the primary goal of our bioregional planning is to ensure that we have a high quality of life. What do we need to do to have a high quality of life, not only for ourselves, but also for the future generations? Now, the transport infrastructure is, as we all know, the backbone of our economy, and it is very closely linked with the land use map. What is happening today is unsustainable urban sprawl, and which is eating up into our rural areas, our water bodies, and so on. So, in order to reserve greenbelt areas, that means the forest, and also have recreational spaces, we need to have a proper planning and have these lungs so that people can, the water bodies and the forests and the cultural aspects of the rural areas can be protected. So we need to make a paradigm shift. So we came out with this concept of transit-oriented development. This design was first done in Denmark, in Copenhagen. It's a 5-finger thing. So what happens is that the transit-oriented development nodule. So you have these roads which connect to these 5 places, and in between you have, for example, the Kaliveli here, the Oroville here, the Usteri here, Bahur here. So you protect these areas and allow development only on these transit corridors. That way, what happens is the infrastructure, which means the road, the drainage, sewage, water supply, and all that becomes easy. But of course, there are villages in between which need to be looked into as well and integrated with these transit corridors. Then we come to the consultation process. We had series of consultation process, as I told you. The last one was in 2018, where we had the Lieutenant Governor of Pondicherry, the Chief Minister, all the MLAs, and the MLAs from the neighboring districts of Viluppuram and Kadlur. And it was, they obviously understood, based on the presentations, that the only way forward is bioregional planning. So I have here excerpts of what people said. Basically, it's a summary. So I'll be sharing this presentation with Mansi so you can see how people actually acknowledged and agreed that we need to take up this bioregional plan. And in that meeting, the Chief Minister also agreed to take it up with the central government, because we can work a lot on the ground level, but unless it is backed by a policy, which means you need to have a structure where we have at the top level, the governments of Delhi, Tamil Nadu and Pondicherry and Auroville agreeing to work together. Because once that agreement is done, then the lower officers take it up easily. Otherwise, they always keep sending you back to the higher officials. So in that meeting, we had presentations from various parts of the bioregion about to show their strengths, the challenges, and so on. And we had interesting group discussions and came out with conclusions as to what should be the institutional framework for the collaboration. How do we coordinate action between each of these subregions? What kind of information we collect? How do we share and how do we disseminate this information? We also had some thematic topics like water, transportation, and coast, where detailed discussions were held. And as Stanley Yet says, a good plan is like a roadmap. It shows the final destination and usually the best way to get there. So this is the larger perspective, the bioregion. Next, we come to specifically to Pondicherry, where we are working as a collective Alliance for Good Governance. And Raghu will be talking to you about the Pondicherry aspect. And then subsequently, we'll go to the individual projects that we have taken up. So we go from a bioregional level to Pondicherry level to individual levels.
Thank you, Prabir. And it's important to also add here, Prabir, that to everybody, that what they are talking about is truly what we can actually see as a participatory planning approach, which in India actually is not happening. So further, when they took this up, the water became integral part right from the beginning, but now they are also involved in a lot of water activities. And this is what Raghu is going to focus here. And over to you, Raghu.
Thank you, Mansi and Prabir, for giving a good introduction. So, though what Mansi said is not happening elsewhere, even here also it is not that smooth process.
I'm sure.
So, it has been a, I think, joyful struggle.
Yeah.
Because of connecting with various communities, bringing in the government, other civil society organizations. So, it has been a learning for us, I think. That is what we should say, we should acknowledge as well. So, when we come to water, I think I remember Mansi's statement that we are almost 70% of water. So, it's water everywhere and it's people everywhere. Yes. But it's the same people who create all the problems for what we call as anthropogenic, or people create all these problems of encroachment, pollution. We over extract water, we waste water quite a lot, especially in Pondicherry, which has got the highest per capita consumption of water. We supply something like 145 liters per person per day, which is one of the highest in the country. And so the value for water for people also is a big question mark. And I think this movement that we are doing along with other communities, with schools, with children, see, at some point you feel that, okay, the adults, like we all adults, we are already spoiled. We cannot be changed. So let us at least talk to the children of the, so that at least in future can be much more water safe. So I think Hubert Reeves' quote is, "Man is the most insane of species. He worships an invisible God and destroys a visible nature, unaware that the same nature is what we protect him later." So can you change the slide?
Yes.
So there has been various initiatives in Pondicherry dating back to the 1980s, I think, which is current, but whereas it has got an historical legacy as well. So one is that Pondicherry has been gifted with about 87 tanks. Now tanks are called as Aries in the local Tamil language. These are basically huge semicircular water bodies where water is caught when it rains, so catch the rain where it falls, and it is stored in and used by gravity for irrigation. So irrigation, I think we keep referring to the word tank, and you should not confuse it with the overhead tanks, because this is a speciality of the east coast of India. You don't see much of irrigation tanks like the Aries system or the Kanmai system of Ramanathapuram in any other parts, because of the geography of east coast, where we don't have a well-defined monsoon like other west coast. Our entire rainfall is dependent on low depression in the Bay of Bengal, and you have to catch the rain when it falls, because the entire rain can come in 10 days, 15 days. So that is how these systems have evolved over thousands of years. And out of the 87 tanks, we only have 84 now, because 3 of them have got urbanized. Our bus stand, our Mohisin bus terminus is one of the old areas which used to exist before. And the canals linking these water bodies also, all these were built around 1200 years before. So we have stone inscription referring to the Cholas, the Chola temple, the famous Chola temple in Bahur, where it's all recorded in stone inscription. So, and earlier, as far as water governance is concerned, we had a beautiful system referred to as the Kudimaramatu system. So you can see even references in the Tamil Sangam literature 1 and 2, where Aries, Kanmais are defined, the water management systems are defined. So it's an ancient, excellent engineering system which has evolved over thousands of years. And they used to be managed by the communities themselves, because there was no PWD and modern engineers those days. So I think they used to be maintained, and they existed also maybe because of that. But the entire management was based on the revenue that came from these water bodies, whether it is fish culture, whether it is income from the trees, what we call as usufructs revenues. Usufructs revenues is all revenues that is generated from the tank complex, from the tank water, from tank silt, from the trees around. So everything, even for potters, so soil for potters, the silt used for agriculture, all the common uses that tanks are used for, because irrigation is only one aspect of the water body that we are talking about. Later, when the French came and took over, I think there was a alternate French and British. They came and went, but they still didn't spoil the water system in Pondicherry and also in Tamil Nadu, I think. So they institutionalized the entire system called Sandike Agricole and case commune for smaller tanks, and there were budgets which were prepared for every person was supposed. I think the latest budget which we came across was about 1950, 1960, where every Ayakadda, the command area farmer, had to pay, I think, 5 rupees per acre of land that he was cultivating. You heard that yesterday. Okay. So these systems were well defined. They had hand-drawn maps for irrigation maps, where the Nilkatis, the water distributors, used to manage these systems so perfectly that Monday one sluice will get water, Tuesday another sluice will get water, and they had perfect conflict management systems as well. So when you say water management, it's just not the management of the water body and collecting and maintenance of the tank, but as well as distribution of the tank, as well as the usufructs management also, because there should not be any conflicts between landless, Dalits, women, other components of the village system. But sadly, when the Pondicherry government took over from French, I think which happened in the 1960s, naturally the control of the irrigation tanks was given to the Public Works Department. And the local administration was in charge of the ponds. We had almost 1,000 ponds over the years. But the entire system had collapsed because of course, there were other reasons as well. The Green Revolution had come. The technology has brought in deep bore wells, diesel pumps from electric pumps to deep bore wells. So the dependence on tank system got reduced. because the PWD did not take care of the system. And naturally, when alternate water systems evolved like deep bore wells, dependence on the tanks got reduced, and the people who were supposed to protect these water bodies, the government, the caretakers, they totally neglected the entire tank system, and everything got relapsed. By 1980s, most of the tanks we could not even locate. So when we had the tank rehabilitation project, which started in 1999, which ran for 5 years under the European Union funding, and later, because of the success of the project, even after the European Union left, the government of Pondicherry continued with the project from 2004 to 2008, which is a rare thing because usually when the foreign funding stops, all the projects get stopped as well. So by I think late 90s, there was saltwater intrusion up to 6 kilometers. So the government had to come out with government orders banning of sinking of new borewells within 6 kilometers from the coastal region. So, 2008, the project ran for 10 years, where it was a successful model of where people, the civil society organizations, as well as the government, they came together, they worked together, and it was proved to be a very successful model. So the success lies in the fact that entire 84 tanks were identified.
Yes.
Because none of them were, people didn't even know that there were tanks at such and such place. So they were all thorny bushes, philosophies growing everywhere and all that. So identification of tanks, they did a survey, mostly done by the Tank Association farmers. So we gave training to the farmers how to do a survey. We brought in polytechnic students, ITI students, trained them on surveying. So we employed them because the government surveys were not equipped to do such large scale. We had to do it very fast because it was a time-bound project. So entire tanks were identified, surveyed, and the encroachments were evicted by people pressure, just by people pressure. So there was no legal, except for 3 or 4 tanks, entire eviction was done by people themselves. Just because the landless came and said, like, we don't own any land, we don't have any land, and most of the encroachers were landlords, big landlords who were cultivating, they had extended. So when we have no land, you already have land, why are you occupying our land, which is a common land? So this was the tactic which followed, and encroachments were evicted. I think within a period of 6 to 8 months, entire encroachments got evicted. But unfortunately, the project came to a halt in 2008, and since then, I think this
Back to contractors.
back to contractors. But I think that is also a positive thing where we came together.
Yes.
That is where all the civil
Pondicherry
society organizations came together. We started working with the farmer associations, tank associations, and I think the entire struggle, which we also see it as a positive thing because that is what kept us together. There has been several initiatives from 2008 onwards, but I think most of the activities which Prabir had talked about is more of 2016. We had a water festival, which was a grand success. Next slide. Okay, now this is a, you can, by the colors, you can see that how many irrigation, all the 84 tanks can be seen there. That's what you see is a overall tanks. Then we have 2 municipalities and 5 communes. So we call them communes because the French had named it as communes from their system. French
Even
communes.
their legal name is also
They are
communal.
also communes.
They are
Communal panchayats.
registered organizations now in Pondicherry.
Yeah, so the communal panchayats are there, and under the communal panchayats, we have the 84 irrigation tanks, and all these 84 irrigation tanks, we have registered societies, which are tank user associations.
So I met 3 societies already now in 2 days.
Oh, great, great. So the Water Rich Puducherry was a people's movement where I think Honorable Lieutenant Governor Dr. Kiran Bedi, who used to be our former Lieutenant Governor, she brought together, or rather I think we brought her and
Yes. I will say
weekend
that
trips.
was-
weekend trips, we organized weekend trips and long walks. I think that especially the 6.7 kilometer long walk on the Siteri channel. And mind you, our water system is so excellent. It's so beautiful. Like Vasudha Kumar Reddy, who is the expert, he said we had walked 164 kilometers. We have more than 160 kilometers of canals, which are the main arteries of what brings water to these irrigation tanks. I think irrigation tanks is one story, but I think without those arteries, water will not reach the tank. So in fact, we had walks organized along most of this Bangaru channel, Sindheri channel, Vikravanti channel. So there are mainly 11 inlet feeder canals are there. So there are 11 clusters of tank associations which have been formed, which were formed into a federation later as well. So you can see various incidents here, before, after photographs. So it's a very big system. What you see on the left-hand side is, the lower left-hand side is what is called as an aqueduct. An aqueduct is, so see, Pondicherry, because of the complexity of the water system, you have water flowing at 3 different levels at one point of time. You have a main inlet canal coming. You will have several aqueducts which will flow above the canal, because it will connect one rice field on the left-hand side of the big canal to the right-hand side of the canal. So these canals are also, they have multiple roles. They are not irrigation canals only. They are also drainage channels. They are also drainage channels. So they have systems called as condoms, or basically dams, which rise up. You can raise the water level and you can irrigate your field. And if you want to drain, you remove those condoms. And so there, and to understand all this, you imagine all this happened about hundreds and hundreds of years before.
So
Currently, they find it very difficult to even design one. And so I think the complexity of the system, and it works today, even today it works so beautifully. So you have architects, you have underground siphons, which are even 50 meters long underground siphons. So basically underground tunnels which connect to fields above a big canal, a surplus supply. For example, where you went to Tilkarikilpet, you have a surplus of the Tilkarikilpet tank is overflowing to the Mullarai channel. But actually there is a siphon below that. It's a 50 meter, 150 feet siphon below that, which even works today beautifully, because that is how you manage different levels of. We talk about Denmark and other areas where they have more roads and water canals. We have even much more complex. I think the Euroconsult project coordinator Peter Reimaker said, like, oh, this is much more complex than what we have. So, and Lieutenant Governor, she brought in the CSR funds together. I think this you want to take up, Collector Arun? Yeah.
What is interesting here, when Raghu is now presenting, is actually all these tanks have been identified. So designation is one part of it which is done, and delineation you already mentioned that with the people's pressure it all went on. And now you will see how they are also advancing further. And mind you, all these things are happening from the citizens' initiative. Government is only moving because citizens are moving the movements here. And that is something very interesting, and actually that brought me here to understand how citizens are mobilizing governments to do something. And that's why we are calling it Swaraj also today. So Praveen, maybe you will wind it up and then we open it.
So basically what happened was the collector gave us a challenge of rejuvenating a pond. He said Vandankulam. When we go there, we find out that it is actually a garbage dumping site, which is on the top side, left corner. So, but since we had accepted the challenge, we had to take it up. So, in association with the local community, we took the help of the local MLA and collector. But of course, the funding was done entirely through community mobilization, and we restored the tank, the pond. On the right side bottom, you see this pond, and it is a 50 lakh liters. And in fact, it has been now included in the smart city project. Now, one thing we must remember is that these ponds that we are rejuvenating, of course, the most important part is holding water so that groundwater is recharged. But there are two other important aspects, which is about biodiversity. So wherever we have been rejuvenating ponds, we are doing a lot of tree planting so that, and the third part is the recreational aspect. Pondicherry is seriously starved of public space.
Yes.
You have only a beach road, which is which you can't walk without bumping into people. But these spaces that you are seeing, the moment the ponds are rejuvenated and we create the bund around it, you see the local community using it as a recreational space. It's a good place for social interaction. Next, we went to, these are from the Pondicherry level. Now we are coming into specific projects. So this is ground level action by the civil society organizations, which is AGG in this case. So this is one of the ponds. It is a pond actually, Eriyaman Kulam, and it was not desilted for 50 years. So we decided it was such a beautiful pond in Abhishekapatnam, so we decided to take it up. You can see the height of the weeds and the depth to which we had to dig. And today it is a 25 million liter tank. So the what was once a pond has actually now become a tank. It took us 6 weeks and a lot of struggle, but we achieved it. Next, we went to the other problem with the administration is that they will give away large chunks of land for government offices. So, for example, this land has been given to the electricity department, and they have built a substation. There was a pond inside it, but when we went, it was completely covered with junk. You know, the electricity posts and old vehicles and so on. But on digging a little, we found out they had beautiful old brickwork as walls. So we took it up and we rejuvenated it. And this gentleman with the green T-shirt, he's a retired police officer who lives around that area. He came for the function and he said that, when we were kids, used to come and swim here.
Wow.
And in front of him, these kids got down and started swimming. So it was actually a huge joyful moment that this pond has become again what it was at once upon a time.
It must be nostalgic for us.
Yeah, he was so thrilled. And then one of the junior engineers took us inside the SIP station and said there is another big pond. And we saw that there was a jungle. So the people nearby in the surrounding areas said that, oh, there are a lot of snakes and this and that. So we decided to take it up. So we have turned it into a beautiful pond, and all the surrounding houses, for them, it has become a recreational space. So we've been planting a lot of trees, and the interesting thing is, wherever we have taken up this pond project, the day we start and the day we finish, there is bound to be rains.
You have
Every
been lucky.
single time we have been fortunate. It's a blessing. So, and we also see that most of the ponds that we have rejuvenated, migratory birds have started coming in, we start seeing turtles and so on. So that is another aspect which is actually a cause of happiness.
I think another important aspect is that people living around get their property value probably 4 times, 10 times higher
Yes, exactly.
without even investing a single
Also,
rupee into
whenever it
it.
rains, their entire area will get flooded.
Yeah.
Ah.
So then
Now-
they can escape the
Yes,
flood.
they can escape the flood and they can actually use all that water also.
Maybe I will bring in Anupama here so that we can start the conversation when you are also presenting, so that I can just move at the background and Anupama can take it
Yeah,
up
yeah,
the
sure.
conversation.
But I'll just finish this OSOP.
Sure, please go ahead.
So this was another tank, pond, which was covered up by PWD to build an overhead tank. Now just imagine you cover up a existing pond and build an overhead tank, which is probably 1/10 or 1/50th of the capacity. So we managed to rejuvenate that, and there were 9 neighborhood associations around it. Now they have found one association. Now they are taking care. They've got permission from the municipality to take care of this pond. This is another interesting project we did. This land belongs to one of the schools, and when the Secretary of Education requested us to help them, because this area was again full of snakes and it was a den for drunkards, as usual when places
no-go
are not
area.
inhabited. When we went and we found out that there were 3 neighborhood associations, and the fact that this place actually was a low-lying area. The underground sewage was connected. We decided to make it into a community rainwater harvesting structure so that all the water is drained into this place. So every year they had this flooding of these areas. So now they have not only no flooding, but we also got created 2 spaces on the 2 ends as playground for the children. This is the latest project. Raghu, you want to
Yeah,
do that?
so this is from Sri Aurobindo Society. We are also part of the AGG. So this year we had identified, I was talking about the Bahu region where Mansi also has visited.
Yes.
So the entire Bahu region drains into what is called as Mulode drainage channel. And it takes the entire runoff from the upper tanks, lower tanks. And whenever it rains 5 centimeters, not 10 centimeters, no, not even 5 centimeters, 5 mm rainfall, Mulode gets filled up and it flows into the Bay of Bengal. So when we had done the tank rehabilitation project about 2008, I think we had formed this Mulode Association, Mulode Farmers Association.
They met me
And they had,
yesterday.
yeah, so they had identified about 20 acres of common land, Parambok land as it is called in Tamil Nadu, which used to be, I think their grandfathers and other people say that it used to be a semi-saline water body, which is called as Uvarangad Tangal. Uvar means salt water. So they had evicted the encroachment. I think as part of the eviction, they had evicted this tank as well, this area as well. But since it was not a listed tank, so it's not a listed water body, PWD was not willing to support it. LAD was not supporting. EU also said no, sorry, because it's only 84 tanks only we can pick it up. So we had left it at that point of time. So this year we had got some money from one of our funding agencies, Department of Science and Technology. So we had a discussion with the Mulode Association, and we had taken up this area. So what you see above is a huge structure of land, and what you can actually see, there is a lower, this small pathway below. So one portion, what you see on the top is the right hand side of it, where you can see some water on the top left hand corner. That is the Mulode channel flowing. So there, the idea is to divert water from there and bring water into this new water body which will be created. So what you see here is there is no water body as well. It's only rainwater pools and puddles here and there. So currently we have started working on it just last month. So in fact, the community engineering is still going. Though the water engineering, the tank engineering is started, we are still continuing discussions with farmers, like what are their concerns. Because as I told you, these irrigation tanks are made through a tremendous timeline. I mean, they have thousands of years of history. So they have evolved from empirical observations, data, breaching of tank bunds and repairing and all that. Whereas to create a new water body, it's not a joke actually. So we are
community involvement is there already.
Yes, so we are involving the community. So we have already started the process. So this is what existed before. So, and see, why we have taken up it is because this is about 20 acres of land, about 8 hectares. It's a huge area, especially just before the Bay of Bengal. It's just 3 kilometers from the coastline. It saves millions of kiloliters of water. I think huge, because 20 acres is quite huge, and which will have at least 10 feet of water, minimum 10 feet of water, at least 3 meters of water can be held up there. It will be hugely beneficial in recharging the groundwater, because I told you even in 90s, 6 kilometers the salt water is already coming to most of the borewells. So this will actually arrest and push the seawater back, the salt water back into the sea. And above all, there are already about 150 farmers who use the water from Mulode thing. Basically, all coastal regions have shallow aquifers, which is very good water. So the people, whenever you go to coastal villages, say we get good water at 10 feet, 20 feet, because it's a sandy area. So because of that sandy, the structure geography, this has even a huge positive impact, because they are not deepening it. Yeah. We are actually trying to create a bund which is taller, so that even if water stays, the sand layer will still
be there.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, next. So this is the various processes that you can even see Mansi in the lower photograph.
Yes, I am also there. It is from yesterday.
So we had several meetings, and these meetings are still going on. So whenever there is an issue, we rush there and try to address what are their issues. We try to solve it that way. Now, what you see here is one portion of the tank which we have already formed. So you can see on the left hand side, you can see the bund. So it's a new bund. Okay, this bund to get stabilized will take at least a decade or minimum 20, 30 years. So we'll be planting palm tree seedlings there and making it strengthen and all that. But what we see is actually history in the making. After the Cholas, yes, this is the first time I think a new area is being created. And I think thanks to AGG and the entire community whom we had worked with, and of course the government departments also had helped us in getting the NOC and all that. Even if they don't have any objection, to get it, if you want to touch the land, you need a no objection certificate. So even that took 2-3 months time. So
this is a very good sign when we are now returning to making water out of land. because for many or nearly 100 years we were making land out of water, and we have lost many of the water
Yes,
bodies
yes.
in the
Reversing the
country.
process.
Now we are reversing the process, and there is already a theoretical discussion going around in the world on redevelopment. And what Anupama is also actually talking about in her work in Chennai, and that's why she is here today to clear her doubts with both of you actually, where she is also trying to get water out of land and also make the land more useful even for human habitation and for biodiversity, of course. So I will invite Anupama here because she is extremely important, and this is also a youth program which we organize, and she can throw her questions and her presentations
One more
to
slide.
both of
There is,
you. Maybe you can take it up when she's asking
Yeah,
questions.
Sure, sure.
So Anupama, over to you. You may ask questions. You saw what these guys are doing. You can also collaborate with them in future, because the Tamil Nadu and Pondicherry cannot really talk about each other without, you know, I mean, without talking to each
We
other.
are already
So,
working with Tamil Nadu.
Yes.
Kadalur.
so
Maybe we
she
should just
has a
quickly
project
finish the-
near Mamallapuram.
Maybe
You
we
want
should
to
quickly
finish it?
finish the OSOP.
Yes, maybe, yes.
That is the topic.
Yeah.
no?
So that's, I think that maybe you can take it up with Anupama's
Yeah,
question, then maybe it will be good.
Yeah,
Then
sure.
you can probably answer what she's looking for. Because she's also keen to find out how to manage these water systems.
Sure,
Yeah.
good.
Yeah. Over to you, Anupama.
Thank you, Mansi, and thank you both of you, Professor Raghu and Mr. Probir. Your work is really inspiring. My questions first were about the One School, One Pond project also. I was just curious to know how you approach these schools and how the response has been, and what the age group of the children is that, that can be involved in this kind of work.
Okay, so
then
you,
I'll have to-
anyway, you have to run it, so very
Okay.
good.
Yeah.
Because
So-
it was good to see you were presenting from the bioregion. See, when we are talking about water Swaraj, it is not only that we talk about only people. And that's something which you have presented, both of you, very well, that some people in the city and the state have to have an overall perspective. Then there have to be a group of people who have to look at the city and the water body perspective. Then there have to be also people who are actually getting into the nitty-gritties to make it happen. And that's the OSOP probably. So please go
So
ahead.
just before this, there were a couple of slides where we worked on the policy levels with the government of Pondicherry. So coming to this, you asked about the OSOP. Well, last year we had bountiful rains. So we decided that we'll make it an occasion, because we need to have not only consultation, but events, celebrations, a joyful celebration. So this year we did a water festival from 2nd February, World Wetlands Day, to 23rd March, World Water Day. And basically one is to celebrate the bountiful rain, but also to see how we can involve more and more people. So the inauguration was in this last school that I talked about, where we rejuvenated one pond, and we launched two interesting programs. One is the Neerkudam Yatra, and the other is the OSOP. I'll speak to you about this now. So the OSOP is basically something which we conceived in partnership with the education department. You can run it separately, but then it doesn't hold ground. So you have to work with the education department. So fortunately, we have a very proactive director, Rudra Gaud, and secretary at that time, Shri Anbarasu. So they welcomed this thing and we worked it out together. So the idea is that every school has a physics lab, a chemistry lab, and all that. Why don't we have an eco lab? So each school will adopt a pond, which will become the eco lab for the school. So that way they will understand about water and biodiversity and do all their experiments in that pond. And the other aspect is all the subjects that we learn, history, geography, math, science, it's all in silos. There is no connection. So this will be, the pond will be actually an integrating component where we look into the history of the pond, the geography of the pond, the maths, the calculations, the biology, the zoology, the arts and culture. It can cover all the aspects of what we are learning. And also when they are working, it will be an experiential learning, and it will also serve community needs, because as we see, the government is not taking care of the ponds and tanks. But just imagine 450 schools in Pondi, each taking up one pond. So the job is done. So, so the students will take responsibility for the conservation of this pond, for planting trees, for putting fish. And we have tied up with all the government departments, fisheries, forest, PWD, and so on. So if the students want trees or plants, forest department will supply it. If they want fish for the ponds, the fisheries department will supply it. So this is a partnership that we have built with all the other government departments. So what will happen is that when they work like this, they will be, able to use their knowledge and skills to solve problems of community. That is very, very crucial.
I think in somewhere this is also a children version of commune, which is already existing, because children were not in the commune version, which we look at the regular water management system. So probably this is a building the future through the same commune model.
So the students have to work with the local community.
Yes.
They can't do otherwise. So this will also develop their social skills. Now for the 21st century skills, we have to talk about learning skills, literacy skills, life skills, and so on. This OSOP program will actually help them in their critical thinking. And by collecting information, the communication skills, problem solving skills, interpersonal skills, collaboration skills. So these are skills which are actually not looked into. So the students will get to know that or master that. And they will learn about their natural heritage, which, the schools, they don't know that there is a pond nearby. It's
I have
so
also
sad.
experienced that.
So this will help them to learn about the ponds and the tanks, the whole system in Pondicherry in general, and the pond near to the place in particular, and how to work with the community. This will also help them by speaking to others, develop their self-confidence and be goal-driven. And once they start working with the community, we are talking about water. They can take up waste management. They can take up a lot of other issues.
Safety. They can take any other urban
anything.
living aspect.
The important thing is the connection between the schools and the community and the NGOs and the government. So the idea of this whole thing is to establish this platform where everyone works together. And through this, they can also get involved in innovative programs like the Children's Science Congress, which is run by the Department of Science and Technology. Now, the Neerkudam was an interesting point. The Neerkudam means the water jug. So the Neerkudam were filled with water from the Usteri, which is the largest water body and an important wetland. And it traveled to all the schools. Now, one school...
Like marathon,
it's a water marathon. So each school will have a function, and then next day,
Jal Yatra.
The principal or the headmaster, along with some students, will go and hand over the Neerkudam to the next school. And there it will be received very ceremoniously. You can see some of these pictures where the Neerkudam is being received, and they had organized beautiful programs. And so one of us would go and speak on water. There would be one community representative who will reassure the school that they will be working and supporting the school in these things. The principal and of course the headmaster will speak, and sometimes some of the students spoke, and they talked so passionately about water. So this is something, and in every school they took a little bit of water from the Neerkudam and poured it into the pond that they're adopting, and took a little bit of water from there and put it in the Neerkudam. This is basically to remind people that the water is connected at the aquifer level, but let us also connect it at the surface level. So this is the interconnectedness of water on Earth. And during this festival, we had 5 competitions. So there was drawing, essay writing, banner competitions. You can see some of the examples here. Each school prepared one Neerkudam, and they came out with such beautiful, innovative models. And the final competition was a 3 minutes video which the students prepared about the pond that they're adopting. So this will be a good way of documenting, and if every year they keep doing it, they can cover all the different aspects. And the topic has always been my school, my pond. So the prizes will have not yet been given. The schools have reopened now, but not all the classes. And so to end, the future is not some place we are going to, but one we are creating. The paths are not to be found, but made. And the activity of making them changes both the maker and the destination. So let us all work together, and let us change ourselves, and obviously the destination will also change, and let us make it into a joyful movement.
I think that opens up the discussion.
Yes.
So my your question of what was the age group, it was basically 10 to 17 years. Because I think primary school children are not advised to be part of it. And all
Yeah,
that.
mainly because the education department felt that it might be risky that if these children go to near the pond, they may
Yes,
fall or
they
something may
fall,
happen.
something may
So we presently, but of course, in the curriculum, when each school has actually appointed an eco coordinator.
Oh.
So they'll be looking after the One School One Pond project.
There's something called National Green Corps, NGC.
NGC.
What is important also to inform all our participants here that it's now an approved approach in the state. So it will be actually adopted to all other schools, and that is what they are now working here. And today we are also seeing how it's not about really talking about one pond or one school. It is how the citizens group have envisioned the entire region and then brought it to the scale of one pond. That is something which Anupama you can also relate with, being from the landscape field, you know, that how large scale understanding and planning matters. And then we also talk about small scale, God lies in details. So One School, One Pond is nearly a classic example of God lies in details, you know, because unless we talk at both scales, we are not actually be able to convince people, because convincing people will lie at the small scale. But having a vision for 50, 20, 100 years, you require a large scale play.
And you also need to take action, rejuvenate ponds.
Yes.
Otherwise,
For example,
to get credibility. Otherwise,
Yes.
people will think
People
that
will
you
not
just talk and
yes,
talk and
yes.
there is
That
no
is
action on the ground.
that is a problem when we have the vision plan which is not substantiated with the action plan on the ground, and that's why this project becomes very important. And they also have a Swarnim Pondicherry and Water Rich Pondicherry program. So Anupama, I know you have some wonderful questions. I am sitting with your questions, but you must ask it. It's your day.
Okay. So
Just to add one more thing, usually the sciences and social sciences don't interact much. Of course, they do it in the college, university level where you take credits and all that. Whereas here, we bring in the sociology, history, economics of the pond also. I mean, children do such beautiful projects as well. So I think this is at a very young age, we make them understand it's not the sectors that differentiate your water. No? It's what integrates. It's what integrates. So I think that is the biggest lesson I think we also have learned from this entire process.
Yeah, we are of course learning from children as well all the time as practitioners.
Water is a harmonizing element.
Yes, you already started
Water as
that
a universal dissolvent or solvent.
Solvent.
Yes.
And also unifier. I mean, there's a whole theoretical group talking about water as a connective capacity.
Yes.
So yes, Anupama, go ahead.
Sorry. You can,
That's okay.
But get together, no? See, this was not really intended that this session is going to have live and together. It is just that happening that my travel and the session water has brought us together, but definitely not planned like this. And it's a really pleasure to be here together and speaking to all of you. Go ahead, Anupama.
Yeah. So we're working on a project which is about 35 acres. And we have 2 water bodies that come within our site, which obviously come under the governance of the PWD. But because they are inside in our on our site, we are kind of responsible on how to manage the whole thing. So we've done a study on the water bodies. We understand that everything is a big network that needs to be responsibly managed. And my main question was the DTCP. To get the DTCP approval, we do need to do a lot of filling to reach the maximum flood level. So when this land is filled up, we realize we'll be blocking the natural flow of water. So how do you deal with this kind of thing? Because we have been studying and talking to people, but ultimately, to prevent flooding, because it is in a flood-prone area. It is off the OMR, the Old Mahabalipuram Road. And so how would you deal with this and allow the water to flow in its natural path and also prevent flooding? And this is a commercial project as well. So, yeah.
No, you have to see, essentially, when water is coming to a place, it is destined to come to that place. So it is basically that space belongs to the water. Now, if we want to take up place there, we have to find an alternative space, which means, like we did in that school project, that is a place where the water is coming naturally. So all we did is created that pond. Now that will stop the flooding of the entire area, So you have to create a space where the water can flow. And if you can capture, if you can find, create containers like ponds or whatever to capture this water, that becomes important, because whatever development we do, if we can have, attached to it a water body, it is good for the well-being of the people around it. So the whole thing is about looking into the topography, making topographic surveys, and finding out the lowest point. And the worst case scenario is, supposing you don't want to keep it at a surface level, you can do groundwater recharge by sinking bore wells, which we are doing in one of the schools, because there's no space and there's no place for having a pond. So you have to build, channelize the water to come to a point where you sink recharge bore wells, but you have to be extremely careful, because this water which is coming could be contaminated, and you don't want to push this water into the groundwater, which could actually jeopardize your entire water aquifer. So there has to be filtration plants and so on, which has to be designed how to filter this water. And if you don't have space, you can just have recharge bore wells. Otherwise, you can create a space which will enhance the value of the whatever development you're doing.
That was my next question, actually, because if somebody were to dump sewage or sewage into something upstream, and that carries it through to our into our site, what do we do?
But
like you said,
there are filtration. There are many cases, across the world, and now even in India, where this water is being treated and then allowed to go into the recharge bore wells.
And even on the surface, we have options to filter and keep it
Yes,
there.
like
Depending on
plants.
how you are intending to utilize the water. Do you want to use it as surface water, or do you want to take it in the
Like the eastern wetlands in Calcutta.
Yes,
The
exactly.
eastern wetlands is all about treating sewage water.
It's a surface water
Surface
treatment.
water treatment.
Raghu, you wanted to add
No,
something?
so one person is whom you can consult is Joss. Joss
Yes,
from
the
Chandipuram
Chandipuram.
is already working with the Adayar Punga, and I think he's approachable as well, because he has more than 50 years of experience
yes.
And
learning from water.
Have you talked to Josh?
Yes, yes. Actually, my work partner worked with him for a while on the Adayar Punga project. So yes, we do plan on meeting him and having a talk with him.
She was one of our students, by the way, where we taught together recently, in the engaging cities. So that's how I know her work as well.
I can put you in touch with other people who can also help you in this whole thing of topographic surveys and designing. If in case you want to do groundwater recharge, otherwise, if you can plan some water bodies, then it's even better.
So,
Yes, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Anupama. Maybe we open the floor for people to ask questions to them, because this is a classic example we saw today, where without a large scale vision plan, working on the ground is incomplete, and working on and having a large vision plan and not doing anything on the ground is, sorry, I said the same thing, but doing something on the ground and not having a larger vision plan is equally incomplete.
That is why the integrated approach
And collaborative.
policy, planning, consultation, information, ground level action have to all go simultaneously.
Yeah, but one of the things which is important, which has happened here in Pondicherry, is that citizens have taken that extra mile and walked, and that's why we are talking about water Swaraj, because we often come across, and especially when I am teaching in the schools, youth say that what can I do? And if some of you are interested, you really watch a 2-minute video also from Sir David Attenborough, where he has the title itself is What Can I Do? This is why it was very important for us to come to all of you with this discussion, that what can citizens do? And this Pondican itself is, by the way, self-help group, I can say in some way. So people have come together because they were concerned about their place. So they did not wait for government to tell them what to do. In fact, when
We tell the government what to
yes,
do.
I was coming to that. When citizens become so aware and become so collective in their deeds, actually they can regulate government to tell that this is what we can do. In fact, when I was going through these 3 communes in last 2 days, we were discussing the same, because these communes were actually silent for many years. When they were working for so many years,
They've been silenced.
they were silenced for many years. But then when you have a voice as citizens group, actually government would like you citizens to be more active. When we're talking about Jal Swaraj, I think government will be the happiest organization when citizens are taking up their responsibility. Today government suffer because citizens are not taking their due responsibility to work on it. And it is not going to happen overnight. I know the kind of pains they are taking. So there have to be few people who are actually mobilizing both sides of it. Community is not going to move by itself. They are not going to move by inch. Raghu is nodding his head. So,
Yeah, you have to come back after 15 years to see we are still struggling.
and government also cannot move as we would like them to move. But if citizens can come together, some of them with good vision skills, some of them with technical skills, some of them some social mobilizing, because you saw in all the scales they were always talking about mobilizing people. And I think Raghu and Probir, all 3 of us are very much in sync that water management is social management. Water will be managed by itself.
Yeah.
And that's where Swaraj comes into very handy to talk about that. Yes, बोलते हैं ना, जब तक आप अपना help नहीं करेंगे, भगवान भी आपका help नहीं करेगा. Something like this, So maybe with these lines, we open the floor to questions, because I know people are attending from at least 10 states I can see. So please ask your questions, and then we can ask for speakers and even Anupama if she can answer. So go ahead and ask questions and raise hand, and even that is open for our core team as well. So maybe Vidhu, Manisha. So we have Parth. Please, Parth, unmute yourself and ask questions.
Good evening, ma'am.
Good evening.
So, ma'am, my question is that when I was reading about such initiatives in Pondicherry, I came across an app, a geotagging app, which was called Neer Nilai, a mobile app.
Yeah.
So, if you could elaborate on the role such technologies can play in water body rejuvenation. So,
yes, he will answer.
Okay.
I am aware of the app, but they are working with those people, and so we may also have him sometime. But I think
See, actually, Neer Nilai is just a concept. We have not yet developed it. This is basically for the OSOP program that we are conducting. So Neer Nilai will be something which the students will use. So in that, the whole thing is geotagged. So if the students are monitoring the TDS level or the BOD COD level, or the areas or the biodiversity that they observe and note, everything will be put on that app. The idea being that through that app, it should all go to a central point where, sitting in a place, you should be able to see in that school what is the area of the pond, what is happening to the inlet and outlet, what is happening to the chemical properties, how much of biodiversity is there.
Fish,
Right from fish to plants to everything. The students, when they start measuring these things, it will all be put in the app, and you will be able to see what is happening in any of these schools.
And also it will be fun, because younger generation would like to have these kind of tools to really interact with the nature.
It also shows seasonal changes in the
Yes,
quality
and
of water.
at a larger
water
scale
level.
for researchers, it becomes a very good database to work on it.
And it is actually still in the production stage, but we are essentially what we have to also do is we have to develop a curriculum, because what the thing is, if you run this educational program parallelly, one day it could just be stopped by some officer.
Which happened with Seeds of Change.
Which
as you
happened with
mentioned.
Seeds of Change. We ran an environmental awareness program for 5 years, which the children loved, because they would do an environmental audit, they would learn how to do bird watching and so on. But one fine day, after 5 years, the whole thing was stopped. So the thing is, how do we integrate? So in the curriculum, history, at what age the history should be built in, so that it is built in. Nobody can stop the project. It becomes a part of their curriculum. So this is something which we are in the process now. For example, if they have to the chemical properties or physical properties when they measure, we have to first decide what is going to be measured. And once we finalize that, then the apps will be developed based on those things. So whether we are measuring BOD, COD level, yes, okay. So the app will be designed so that we can measure that. Are we measuring the areas, volumes, and so on? One portion will be history. So the history of it will be there in the app. You want to go to the school, you find out the history of the pond, and there you are. You know the history.
So georeferencing is, I think, the trial which you have also
Which we
worked
have
with,
done.
which
Yes.
you have done. But
Yeah.
it can be upscaled to other
All the other
aspects of the
parameters.
water as well.
But that will be dependent on the curriculum that we develop. And now at present, we are actually in the process of developing the curriculum.
Curriculum and how it will be integrated with high school and middle school, and that is also the
Yes.
discussion we had for last 2 days when I am here as well. But they are definitely working on it. I'm just an observer here. We have next question from Zeenat. Go ahead, Zeenat, and greetings from Pondicherry.
Hi, thanks a lot. It was a very interesting presentation, and sort of brought back a lot of things that at DA we did many years back with the CLEAN program, with children looking at water measurement of water parameters. And, this app, and I totally agree with this concept that you have to integrate it in the age appropriate curricula, so that it becomes part of the formal process and is not sort of given up. But the question that I have is from the data, and something that I was looking, I'm concerned how, this data that the students generate,
Yes.
which is great from a citizen science perspective, great from understanding what's happening. What is the relation, or how are you connecting it to it become credible for the municipalities to take action? Because they always say that citizen data doesn't have credibility.
Okay.
And obviously these are student labs, so there is an accreditation of the data that would be questioned. So
Okay.
is there something that you're sort of addressing, and how?
Yes. The thing is, this entire process is being done with the education department, number one, and we are involving all the other government departments as part of this initiative. Okay. Now, one thing is that these departments are expected to do certain things which they are not doing. For example, we have a Pondicherry Pollution Control Committee. They're supposed to monitor the pollution levels in each of these ponds. Obviously, they don't have the capacity, or maybe the intention also, to actually do the monitoring, right? So
Right.
if just imagine 84 tanks and 600 ponds, if they have to go and monitor on a regular basis year after year, you think it is possible? It is. They will not do it. They don't have the manpower to do it. Now, just imagine that every school says that, okay, we will do it for you. So
Yeah.
it is making, if you were working in the pollution control board or committee, you will say that, okay, that's fantastic, because you are doing this job free for me, which I would have spent, I don't know how many crores of rupees every year
Yes.
to engage so many officers to go and monitor these things. Now, forest department is supposed to plant certain number of trees to show that they are doing something. Now, can they plant, or even if they plant next year, those plants, whether they're surviving, they don't know.
Absolutely.
But when we do these tree planting programs, there is a sketch, there's a map, and each tree or several trees are under the responsibility of one student. So
Right.
the students have to maintain these trees for 2 years. Okay. So, so the forest department is only too happy, because if you want 20,000 trees or 40,000, 50,000, whatever. So they are assured that these trees, and we do it in partnership with the forest department. So the forest department knows that so many trees have been planted and that they'll be taken care of for the next 2 years. So actually, it's a win-win situation.
It is, but have you come across any challenges with respect to the departments or parts or some vested interests not wanting this to happen and therefore creating barriers? I mean, getting bad quality data is not always the best for the departments to and for the public to know.
As of now, there is no data.
Yeah. I will
Yeah.
add here.
Neither official nor non-official, there is no data.
No data.
Zero data.
Yeah.
I think we also have to understand the essence of doing it. The essence is not to generate data. It's not our ultimate goal and the only goal. The essence
Right.
is also make
Students.
people, particularly in this case, students, be associated and be empathetic about their water system. See,
Absolutely,
if data
yeah.
is not used in future, it's okay. But one thing is for sure, students learn how to register data. You know,
Also, they know about BOD, COD.
they
Otherwise,
also
well,
learn BOD, COD. They also learn that this kind of app is possible. Then maybe today we may not have the best app possible for water systems, but any innovation you will see in the world, the first version is never the best version. But then somebody has to start somewhere, and this is where
Yeah, this is just
Pondicherry
a-
has started. So if students and schools can get into understanding and taking charge, so first, see, Probir already is mentioning trees will be taken care, water will be taken care, even if the data is not up to the mark of presenting a scientific paper, let's say. These students in future 10 years from then, they will be in a position to actually develop data. They will learn to develop data because
Yeah.
we know that students struggle to write scientific papers. We know students struggle to mine data. At least they will know that something, a process is possible. And when we are talking about water, it is not only the education itself, because the road to empathy is through education. I think that's what they are trying to do, you know, because they're already working. If we can have 20 or Probir and 20 Raghu in Pondicherry, probably they will have to work all their life to take care of the ponds. But then we have to have a system where community can take it, and it is age-old system which they are trying to revive and then bring the students on board. Rajesh saying we are running late, but I will extremely apologize from the Wednesdays for Water side, but then also we are having a very good discussion, so we can continue for a few more minutes. Rajesh saying, please take your question, ask your question. Sorry.
Thank you. Am I audible?
Yes,
Yeah.
you are audible.
Yes.
Go ahead, please.
I'm just asking, very wonderful work in Pondicherry. From which source this funds were leveraged? Because for every such task, funds are needed. So how the funds were leveraged?
Okay, million-dollar
Okay.
question. And I guess you did not attend the last session also, because Governor was also talking about how funds are leveraged. But then you hear from the horse's mouth, okay?
See, we are all volunteers.
Yes.
This
Okay.
is something we do for no remuneration. It's just because we are passionate about it. So as far as AGG is concerned, our organizations, we are all working pro bono. Okay. But we love what we are doing, especially because we are connecting with students, with government, with so many people. And when the joy happens, when you see all these people, the synergy is building up, this is what happens. Okay, now as far as the rejuvenation of ponds is concerned, it involves costs, right? So there were two ways. One, initially what we did was we mobilized through contributions. People gave, we said that we want to do take up this pond, rejuvenate this pond. People contributed and we got it. Actually, we found that it came very easily. Okay. The other way of doing it is we tied up with the contractor and told him that this is a pond which we need to rejuvenate. So we need to do desilting, use that soil for making the bund around it. So you have to invest that, you get the JCBs and the machinery and trucks and whatever, you do this work. Whatever remaining soil is there, you can sell and recover your cost. Sometimes most of the times they lose money, but fortunately the guy who is working has been a friend, and because of his interest, he is also passionate about doing it. He has sometimes made money, sometimes lost money, but it's an ongoing process.
Very
But I think the
And
moment
we
he
also have
sees
schools coming forward to support. Like
Yeah, for example, during the water festival, Clooney School took up one pond.
that's an interesting.
Yeah.
And the pond they took up, they desilted it. The day they finished, that night it rained, and
Okay.
the whole pond was full. And the interesting part was that it is actually on the road to the airport. The airport, that area gets completely flooded and becomes a pond with the slightest of rains. So by them taking up this pond, that night the entire water drained into this pond. There was no flooding. The pond was full. So it was good. And just imagine when you are taking up some work, to see results overnight is something which is, very, very good for you.
It's
Because
overwhelming for the
Yeah.
children in the school. I think so.
next day morning they saw the pond was full of water. So they were successful, not only filling the pond, but stopping
Flood.
the flooding on the airport road.
Fine.
So it's
Very nice. Very nice.
see,
Thank you.
when citizens want to do something, I think we also have a saying "Jahan chah wahan raah." So
Yes.
I have been also working on water for 25 years. I think it's water management is social management. First step has to be taken, and that's what Pondicherry and AGG people have taken the movement. Otherwise, citizens like any other city. I live in Ahmedabad, and you all live in different cities. You know that citizens are all waiting. There's a theory also
Yes.
about it.
Yes.
Citizens are waiting for somebody to move that first stone. Then
Yeah.
everybody is willing to move. So we really need, I can't clone Prabir and Raghu from here, but because they are busy in Pondicherry, but the essence of these sessions are that you all take these initiatives in your cities. And I know these guys very well that if you need any assistance, they are also going to come
Yeah,
forward
most happy.
and share their learning, and even whatever possible they will definitely do. And it is about any part of the country, by the way. So
Yeah.
only
But we
thing
have a
is that you
wonderful
have to
team.
decide and take it further that I want to do it. I'm sure they also had paused there
Yeah,
that
we
kaise
started
kare.
some way, but when you see we have a wonderful team now. There are a lot of youngsters, you know, they will be at the site, that they're doing their work. We have a fantastic team at the moment. But what happens is when you start this work, you'll
Yeah.
see, you know, people coming from places, funds coming in. So as they say, you know, when you want something strongly enough, the universe will conspire to make it happen.
Yes.
And we are seeing it actually happening. How
Yeah.
people have joined into this initiative, how funds have come in. It's just,
You have to just
amazing.
decide.
It's
That's what
contagious.
it is
Yeah.
contagious, and I think that's where when we are talking about Jal Swaraj today, we also have to understand that whenever we have to really achieve something at a citizen's level, somebody and the leadership role or the catalytic role has to be played by somebody who has passion about water, who really wants to do something. Maybe frustrations are also part of this game when
Yeah,
you achieve something, but then we have to really, yes, we are together here, huh? So that's interesting.
Yeah.
It's really amazing to have these guys here together, not planned, but it has happened. So we are very thankful to have this session with all the speakers and Anupama there in Chennai. And of course, my entire team. If my team has any questions for the speakers or Anupama, if you may ask. Otherwise, I also wish to announce to you that this month we have a bumper month, I can say, in Wednesdays for Water, because we started with water democracy with Dr. Kiran Bedi. Today we talked about water Swaraj, and next week we are talking about water Jal Satyagraha, and we have distinguished speaker Medha Patkar to talk about it. So please join us, keep joining us and support us in these initiatives. And we will really, in this month, we will actually see how different ways we can talk about water governance and we can engage in water. So Jal Satyagraha will be also another angle of looking at it, and it is equally an important part of water democracy or water governance, we can say.
Today we have a network in Pondi. Maybe if all of you join, we can have a national network.
We can
Yes,
also
yes.
we can also initiate, maybe you are already leader in this field, you can also start a national network of this, of one school, one pond. That was also the idea that we discussed it. So if any one of you want to take such initiative in your city, maybe do contact Prabir and Raghu, and we can share you their information. Do write to us. We have their information, and you can also, of course, Google them. And I think they are very happy to take it further to others. In fact, I connected with them for the very reason that how can we upscale it to the country? Because if Pondicherry can do it, I think they can really help us do it in other parts of the country.
Last
It
few
will
days
take a
ago,
little
I
bit
had
more time. That's it.
last few days ago, I had a presentation in
You
Auroville.
also had presentation in
In Auroville.
Ahmedabad and Auroville.
Yeah. So wherever you go, they immediately want to start this OSOP.
Yes.
One school, one pond, which will be supported by the local community. So they were so keen on taking it up right away. So next week they're fixing a meeting so that they can take up this OSOP program.
So the idea is that right now also I see at least people from 10 states. So if you can be the first person to take it up, and why we all have to start with one pond. We all have to start with one
school.
individual.
One school, one pond.
So one individual first, and then one school, then one pond. And I already invited Anupama for the very reason, because she is now the first seed in Tamil Nadu, you know. So, and I will also encourage my students to become these little seeds here and there and just take that first step. Believe me, Swaraj is from one individual to the large scale. It cannot happen from a large scale and it can come to one individual. It has to be one individual dreaming about it and taking it further. So beyond Swaraj, there is also a route of Satyagraha, and that's what we have to talk next week. And I would like to take this opportunity to thank both our speakers and friends, Raghu and Probir, and of course Anupama sitting in Chennai, and all my team members from Wednesdays for Water, and definitely all of you who have been very supportive to run this series. We complete 7 months this October, and we have been having wonderful sessions all through, and we are getting appreciations from all of you. And we do look forward to having you next week on Jal Satyagraha, and we have Medha Patkar as our distinguished speaker. So that will also close the loop of looking at water democracy, Jal Swaraj, and then Jal Satyagraha. And of course, the week after also, we have very interesting sessions where we look at how corporates look at water. So in this month, we are actually looking at all the different types of stakeholder water governance. So thank you very much. Please take care of yourself, and we look forward to having you next Wednesday. And God bless you.
Thank you,
and
Mansi.
stay wet.
Thank you very much. And
Yeah.
thanks to Manisha.
Manisha, yes. So we have Manisha actually
Thank you.
taking all three
Thank you so much.
over. So it has been very interesting for us because we were live here together. All of you had a digital session, but we were having live session here. So thank you very much, all of you. And I think.
Thank you, presenters, for joining us today and enlightening us with your wisdom. Also, thank you all the participants for joining us and making the session interactive. We quickly take you through the citizens who make this collective: Vibhu Prasad Nayak, Fauzia Tarannum, Ganesh Shankar, myself Mansi Bal Bhargav, Rajiv Shah, Gautami Bhaviskar, Manisha Sharma, Megha Gupta, Srinivas M.R. and Basanta Subaya. We represent Tata Institute of Social Sciences, Hyderabad, Terry School of Advanced Studies, New Delhi, Environmental Design Consultants, Ahmedabad, FluxGen Sustainable Technologies, Bangalore, Counterview, and we are supported by Wikis Water Resources Council. We truly appreciate your support and encouragement in conducting this series, and we hope that you will stay tuned with us through our social media platforms and our website, and you will write to us at our email IDs. Thank you once again to all of you. We look forward to having you in the next session. Please take care of yourself. Bye-bye.